Welcome everybody, we're out here in Lakeland, Florida, and today we have a very, very special guest, Colonel Bob Thacker, a virtual legend in United States history and Air Force history, and today he's with us. You're laughing at that, right?
Well, yes, you know, I think some of that is just a little overdone.
A little overdone?
Just a little overdone.
All right, I'll recut that intro.
No, let's don't do it again. I can't stand any more of that.
So, Colonel, you get started in model airplanes in 1929, right? Is that about right?
Well, that's close enough. How about 1926?
Okay.
A little solid models, and that's when I found sandpaper. And you could sand it. It was just, oh, I was so taken that you could take a little piece of wood and slats it, and you end up with a nice little model of the, say, well, the Spirit of St. Louis, Lindbergh's airplane.
And I had read that the Spirit of St. Louis was your favorite and maybe first plane, right?
Yes.
And you've been involved in model airplanes ever since?
Really, aviation has been my interest and my hobby, and my I've just been in it ever since 26, and I'm as excited today as I was in 1926.
And you've flown all manner of aircraft over your career, right?
My real interest was in big airplanes. But after I got through with my second tour in Europe I flew one tour against the Japanese and one tour against the Germans.
Who was tougher?
I got closer to being killed over Berlin than I did against the Japanese. However, the Japanese Zero was such a superior fighter when we started World War II that we were all aghast that the Zero could get to our altitude. I was flying B-17s, and the Zeros, they would fly circles around me, and each circle was a forward attack, and you could see those headlight traces coming at you. They were shooting 20 millimeters at me, and those things are big.
Tell me the story about when the attack on Pearl Harbor came.
Oh.
Where were you?
Friday night, General Marshall, our chief officer, called and said, get out of bed, get your airplane, and go to San Rafael, Hamilton Field. This is at 3 o'clock in the morning. We never went back to Salt Lake. We left cars, bank accounts, laundry, the whole works. So I'm off to Honolulu. So we took off about 10 o'clock at night. Single airplanes, no formation. After 14 and a half hours of shooting star fixes, my navigator put us right at Diamond Head. So I let down to the clouds. There's Diamond Head, flying along the coast. I said, what are those big black scratches in the air? And I said, volcanic action. That's the anti-aircraft going back into the ocean you should follow. So I'm on the horn, blah, 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 blah. Nothing. I said, what is that tremendous black smoke that just went up out of there? And my radio operator was changing frequencies for me, and he said, they're burning off the cane fields. The tower came on. He said, Air Force 432, you are number 2 to land north to south. We're attacked by Japanese aircraft. And I'm right over Ford Island. Bang, 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 bang. Then I'll give the Navy credit. They were shooting. This was about 8:10, I guess. And the attack started at 8. So I said, geez, hey, fellas, stop shooting, it's me. It's me. So I came in on my final. 3 Zeros jumped me and shot out my right gear and wheel. But fortunately, I had enough airspeed that I could ground loop the airplane on the end of the runway.
You actually landed and got out of the aircraft?
Yes, I did.
And then what'd you do?
Well, just about that time, here come this beautiful formation of 12 Japanese Betty bombers bombing the airfield. And they did a beautiful job. You can't imagine the confusion. To give you a little story I haven't told before, the bombing effort of Hickam Air Force Base for the whole day was everybody with any rank got on board this one B-17 that was operable, because they were all sure they were going to get Medal of Honor. So taxied out, gave it the needle. I watched this airplane. Over it went on its nose, hitting all 4 propellers, and smacked the ass back down on the runway. They had forgot to unlock the flight controls. So that shows you the confusion of the absolute impossibility of doing anything from Hickam Field.
Where do you go next?
We got our orders to move to Brisbane, Australia. On one of our sorties working out of Port Moresby, we're cruising along at about 25,000 feet, and we saw this ship down there. So we're on reconnaissance, and we'll just go and take a look. So all of a sudden, we get a little flak. So I told the bombardier, open the bomb doors, and we're going to make a run on that bastard. If they're shooting at you, I'm going to attack them. So we started our run, dropped our bombs, 2 short and 2 over. And the minute I landed back at Port Moresby, I knew I was in trouble. I'd made a run on the USS Chicago. So how's that for a war story?
You did tours in Europe, though, too, before?
Yes. No, after.
After the Pacific, okay.
Yeah. In the military, they train you, go where the loudest noise is. And I knew Europe was organized. So I sniffled my way into a bomb group in England, and I flew a tour over there. We were so powerful, and we flew in boxes of 54 airplanes right behind each other. When the first bombs were letting go on Berlin, the last group of B-17s was just coasting out over England. So if you're in Berlin, you've got 3 hours of constant bombing. When you're trying to find a target in downtown Berlin with smoke screens and cloud cover, our bombing was not as accurate as we would have liked to have it been. In fact, in the European theater of operations, in visual bombing and in daylight, the average circular error for all reasons, and this is trying to hit a pickle barrel, was 5 miles.
So tell me about the transition from bombing to flying jets, Betty Joe.
That's a good question, the transition. One day, my boss called me when I was stationed at Wright Field and said, Thacker, I want to talk to you for a minute. Okay, so I reported duly and saluted. He said, we want to do something with this twin-engine, twin Mustang fighter that looks like 2 P-51s stuck together. So they said, we want you to fly it from Tokyo to New York. So I took a look at that and I said, this airplane's not going to fly nonstop from Tokyo to New York. But it can be flown from Honolulu to New York with a little to spare. So I assigned a captain and a lieutenant to the program. And my boss called me up and said, Thacker, you do it. I said, okay, Chief, you know, you did what you're told in those days. So they assigned me the P82 project. We were assigned projects in those days. And Chuck Yeager was assigned the X1 project. So I named the P82 Betty Joe.
In your peak, who was a better pilot, you or Chuck?
Oh, Chuck by far. Chuck by far. He ran the whole supersonic program on captain's pay.
What makes him such a good pilot?
He has great vision, and his whole psychology just makes him that kind. He liked to fly.
What would you say to kids these days that might have an interest or might not have an interest in aviation?
If I had a grandson right today, I would recommend that he go to one of our service schools, either Annapolis, West Point, or Colorado Springs, and train yourself as a pilot. We're not training Air Force or Navy pilots anymore. Half of them are taken to drone school. And the thing that worries me today, one of my big concerns, and I'm 94, is we're not training anybody to fly our commercial airlines. They love military pilots because they know what they're doing and will follow orders.
Are you still active in the armed forces?
No, I fly on Camp Pendleton, but I have no official relationships to the military right now. Because if they have to recall me, we are in terrible condition. I can tell you that. All I want to do is present the situation as the public. I think you got your money's worth in me.